Hey everybody, my name is Colin. I'm the founder here at Predictable Revenue, and I was having a conversation with one of our consulting clients earlier this week about moving from founder-led sales to hiring your first AE and talking a little bit about how to fill their pipeline. And we got on the subject of sales development. And so today I'm having a cup of coffee. It's Friday morning. I just wanted to share a couple things that I thought might be interesting from that conversation. And so the first question was, who do I hire first? I'm a founder. I'm currently selling. Who should my next hire be? And my comment was AE first, SDR second, and then you kind of build out from there. And it's sort of balancing the top of funnel and the volume that the AE can handle. So a lot's going to depend on the sales math and how much your AE and your SDR can both contribute. Now, when we talked about the hiring profile of that AE, I strongly recommended they find an SDR or an AE who had been an SDR before, and generally on the, I don't want to say younger, but on the fresher experience side that is on a really high career trajectory. So it could be anybody of any age, but they're probably 3 years into sales, 3-4 years into sales. They've spent a couple of years, maybe 1 or 2 years as an SDR, and they spent 1 or 2 years as an AE. They've shown a real high potential for consistently hitting quota, or they've hit quota. They've shown that they can hit quota, and they've demonstrated that they have the ability to grow and learn really quickly. And you can see this person being a manager one day. That's generally the kind of person I'm going to hire for my first AE, especially as this is almost exactly what I did when we went and crossed that $83,333 monthly mark. If you're going 0 to 1, that number is the monthly, the MRR you need to get to $1 million in ARR. And so on the route there, I think probably I might have hung on to the AE role a little bit too long, but my background is in sales. I spent 10 years as an AE before I started PR. And so I started in the AE role, and then I hired an AE next. And Kay, she was awesome. She was more on the experience side. It didn't have the sales development experience, but she was an absolute legend when it came to closing new deals. The reason I say hire an AE with SDR experience is I'm assuming you're B2B and you're going to be using sales development, whether it's inbound, outbound, midbound, as a demand gen channel or as a path to customers. So having an AE with an SDR background is going to give them a much greater appreciation for everything that goes into booking that meeting. The second reason why is if this person is eventually going to be a future leader for the team, you're going to need this hybrid sales manager, sales development manager. Then having somebody who's been a sales development rep before, it's amazing. Salespeople are great bullshit detectors, and having a sales leader that doesn't have sales development experience is pretty common, but it's also really hard on the SDRs. And so if you are a founder and you are trying to build this first team, then I highly recommend looking for somebody with a couple of years SDR experience. The third advantage there is not only, kind of piggybacking off the first advantage of hiring an AE with SDR experience, they will know how to follow up with their deals. Not only do they appreciate the deal and all the work that goes in, and they know how to keep that conversation going, but if they have strong sales development experience, they're going to have a really strong follow-up game, which is absolutely incredible for any business that has any sort of revenue contribution from an outbound motion. And so that was a conversation we had on the AE side of things. And then we started to jump into outbound tactics, and they were asking about, what should I be aware of, or what do most people not realize when they're building outbound? And these people had outbound going for them already, but it was feeding the founder, and they did have a really strong inbound pipeline. And I think the thing that I always like to start with is just a number that is wrong, but probably directionally correct. If you think about the total percentage of buyers, think about your total market. Then think about the total percentage of buyers that are ready to buy right now. There's tons of people that say, I've got a good stat. It's impossible to know because it's going to be specific to your market. But let's pretend it's 5% because it makes the math easy. That means if you're hitting a distribution of people that was a representative distribution of the market, that means without outbound campaigns and you're booking, say, 20 meetings, that means 1 in 20 meetings is going to be interested in buying right now. Okay. So 5%. And so this is something that every outbound team needs to take into consideration. And it's one of the biggest reasons why when I hear people say, oh, we're doing outbound, but we're not getting any projects in or not getting any qualified ops, the first thing I ask is, talk to me about your definitions. And what I hear most frequently that really just boils my blood is, oh, well, they didn't, they were the right person at the right company, but they didn't have a project in the next 90 days. So it's not good pipeline. And then the AE just chucks it. And you're like, well, hang on a sec. Like, if we know that 5% of buyers are ready to buy, why are we throwing out those 19? Why are we doing nothing? And this is, I ranted, my blood boiled. I stood up on a soapbox and I yelled for a bit. And when I finally calmed down, I described what I thought I wanted to share here, which is the kind of 4 important outbound funnels that every sales development team needs to consider. So if we, assuming the 5% being ready. And so obviously the first outbound funnel is, and when I say funnel, I'm not specifically talking just about a sequence. I'm more talking about the sales process, the next steps, what you're going to do with that prospect, and with what sort of the rules of engagement are. And so the first one is obviously interested now. The 5% of respondents in your outbound campaigns might be higher, and it is likely that people that are replying to your cold emails are more likely to be interested. And so that number shifts, but I just do this to make the math easy. So interested now, people that are replying back like, hey, that sounds great. We're actually in the market, blah, 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 blah. Let's have a conversation. So that's the first one. You need to have a process for that funnel. The second funnel, and gets a little bit harder. It's they are interested, but they're not quite ready yet to buy. There might be a small delta between expectations and reality, but it's not yet big enough for them to buy, or there is some sort of obstacle in their way. Could be people, process, or cash sort of obstacle, like they don't have the budget. They're blocked on a technology choice or whatever. So they're interested and not ready. This is your first little pile of gold. If you're an SDR, you may or may not be introducing this person to your AE, but you are. And so if you aren't, this person stays in your funnel, right? And there you need to have a long-term follow-up for these individuals. The type of content that you're going to send to somebody, and now this is as an SDR, you're stepping almost into a mini marketing role. And in a lot of teams, you might be passing it back to marketing or coordinating with marketing for this particular follow-up. But if you don't have that support, and because I'm assuming a lot of you are in that sort of 0 to 1 or 1 to 10 million revenue range, you may not have the marketing support you need. And so the following up with interested but not ready probably falls on you if you're an SDR. So what type of content are you going to send to somebody who's interested but not ready? I want to caveat this with, I'm not saying you should send them a piece of content every single week and be super annoying. As Aaron always says, the only way you can be annoying is by being annoying. I'll dovetail this with another, conversation we were having the other day about SDR attribution. And there's a lot of different ways, but one of the numbers that came out was 90 days. If an SDR hasn't touched an account in 90 days, do they get attribution? There's a lot of different contexts, a lot of different reasons why or why not. But let's just use that as an easy answer that's applicable generally to most people. If you haven't touched that person in 90 days, then you're probably not contributing to them or to your company staying top of mind. So interested but not ready, got to be touching them every 90 days with specific content about this is why the company is great, and trying to help them, trying to identify the obstacles that might be getting in their way of not being ready to buy, and then providing content for them. Now, the next funnel, so the first funnel was interested now, and that's probably handing off to an AE and having your kind of supporting workflow there. The second piece is interested but not ready, and that's where there is some sort of obstacle, some sort of reason why they are unable to make a purchase right now. The third funnel that you need to work is the not interested funnel. These aren't the people that are unsubscribing. These are the people that are not replying. They might be clicking, they might be opening, they might be engaging with your content, but they are not giving you any sort of positive engagement right now. And this is a great funnel. Being a good Canadian, and especially from Vancouver, there's a huge recycling program here, and compost and this and that. And it always just comes to my mind, these prospects are not one and done lists. You can recycle them constantly. And it comes back to the getting, if you're an SDR and you want to make sure you get credit, you need to be touching anybody who is potentially a right fit at a right fit company and the right job title. You want to be touching them every 90 days. If they're not interested, if they're not showing strong engagement, it's maybe every 2 quarters. So instead of every quarter, it's every other quarter. That's still twice a year. And so that's the kind of third follow-up funnel, or the third outbound funnel that you really need to pay attention to. And the last one is the long-term, I'll call it manual nurture. And these are for those deals that made it, the opportunities that made it to an AE, but they haven't made it all the way through the AE pipe. So it might have been closed. I mean, it was closed lost for whatever reason. So, they had a meeting with an AE and then it didn't go anywhere, whether they weren't ready or they couldn't buy or they weren't a good fit. There's a bunch of different ways to break this one down. If it wasn't the right person, the AE can flip that back to the SDR, and that can be a great jumping off point for, hey, we've learned something, go find this other person. If it was a wrong job title or anything like that, it's all feedback into the campaign. But if the AE, if they took a conversation and the AE had that conversation, you're probably going to be able to learn quite a bit about this prospect from those notes. Generally, these on my teams, this long-term manual nurture falls on the AEs, but some other teams might be organized a little bit differently. And so the last piece is just that long-term follow-up on your closed lost opportunities or nurture not ready opportunities. All of these funnels don't necessarily warrant a sequence going every single month, every single week, but they absolutely need to be tracked as account statuses and contact statuses in your CRM somewhere. I highly recommend putting them in the various sequences. And so as you are moving a contact from one campaign or one sequence to another, you are automatically building your rules so they flow nicely. This way, there's no good prospect left behind. We had a client in the very, very early days, and it was FOAD. I can't remember the first stood for, but the second ones were off and die. And that was the only reason they waited till they got FOAD until they would finally never follow up with that prospect again. And so this just puts the bow on that's the reason why somebody would be exited from a funnel. And everybody else should be in one of these funnels, whether it's a quarterly or twice a year kind of funnel or a manual nurture funnel. These are the 4 ones that as you build your outbound motion, the follow-up and the results from these outbound funnels, from these nurture and follow-up campaigns start to kick in. And this is why we start to see big bumps coming after the 12-month mark, because those 19 of 20 people that you talk to in the first part of the year or in that first 12 months are now starting to come and be in a buying ready mode. And so not only are they now buying ready, but you've also been the first person in the door having a conversation with them. And if you're following up with them quarterly, you're likely to hit on them when they are just becoming, or when they're closest to being ready or being in a buying mode. So that's my Friday rant for your 4 outbound funnels that you need to think about. The fact that only 5% of buyers are ready to buy right now, and you need to treat the other 95% with respect by putting them in the right follow-up funnel, and thoughts on why you should hire an AE with SDR experience and potential and leadership potential as your first hire if you're transitioning from founder-led sales to your first AE team. All right, that's it for me today. Thanks so much. We'll see you next week.